وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So, I'm going to talk about the period between Uhud and Khandaq from now on in a different way. I'm not going to keep on repeating what I'm repeating lately. I think everyone who's attended the last maybe 6 lessons has heard me say the exact same thing every time. They ran down that mountain. They made a mistake. They were greedy for a moment. They didn't mean it, but in an indirect way, they caused the chain of events, the sequence of events that happened later. It was all their fault. The loss, the death of Hamza, the loss of the day of the Prophet falling into the hole. The 3 incidences of treason that the different tribes around Medina performed. Abul Qara, and the story I told you last time about Bir Ma'una, and Khalid ibn Sufyan and his group trying to raid Medina, and Bani Nadir, which we're going to talk about today, trying to kill the Prophet. So I said, all this happened because after Uhud, after they lost, everyone felt, maybe they weren't as strong as we thought they were. Maybe we don't need to really have treaties with them and live in peace with them. Maybe it was just an anomaly, just a one-time thing. Mistake, Quraysh lost by mistake. Quraysh has always been the strongest and they always will be. So and what I focused on the last couple of times was the ripple effect. You see, when you make a mistake, when you make a choice, when you make a decision in your life, not only do you affect yourself, you sometimes will affect a lot of people around you. And sometimes the extent of that effect will continue for years and years to come. The mistake that they made that day caused half of Ali Imran to be revealed. There's Quran that's going to be recited to the day of judgment that you have to memorize because of the mistake that they made. That's a big deal, for you to do something and then the Quran to come and document it and talk about it. And for the Prophet ﷺ to have a physical mark that was continue with him till the day he died. See, his face before Uhud is different than his face after Uhud. See, if you had seen him ﷺ, and you saw 2 pictures, you could know, is this prior to Uhud or after Uhud? See, prior to Uhud, he didn't have scars on his cheeks. Prior to Uhud, he didn't have a broken tooth, all because of the mistake they made. I'm not going to talk about that anymore, I'm done explaining it that way. I look at it from a different angle. But it's important that you walk away from all of this, understanding that your decisions, your choices, they are the most sacred thing that you have. They're the only true possession that you actually own. It's the only thing you actually own, is what you do, your choices. Understand that you affect yourself, you affect others, short-term and long-term, directly and indirectly. And sometimes you may not mean it, but you make the wrong decision, you make the wrong choice. You affect others, and you're held accountable for it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you about it. Just keep that in mind. Today I'm going to tell you the story. I don't know, this is too high, isn't it? The final act of treason that happened, but it's not the final, but one of the last, was Banu Nadir. Banu Nadir are one of the 3 tribes that live in Medina, that signed with the Prophet ﷺ the treaty, the constitution of Medina, when he became the leader. And Banu Nadir is a Jewish tribe that lived in the, what part of Medina, where did it live? Where did they live? Does anyone know? What part of Medina we talk about here? We talk about the northern part or the southern part of Medina? Yeah, so the southern part of Medina was basically covered by these 3 Jewish tribes, Banu Nadir, Banu Qaynuqa, and Banu Qurayza. And this is going to become important in maybe 2 more halaqat ahead when we talk about Khandaq. So Banu Nadir lived there, and they were quite wealthy. And the Prophet ﷺ had a habit of visiting all the different tribes and all the people of Medina, regardless whether they were Muslim or not. He wanted to keep good relationships with everyone. So as he was starting or beginning his visits and his to Banu Nadir and the different tribes, it came to his attention through Talha and Sa'id that Banu Nadir were sending messages back and forth to Quraysh. There was some correspondence going on between Banu Nadir and between Quraysh. And Ali was able to get his hands on some of these messages. And they were able to confirm for him that Banu Nadir were talking to Quraysh about basically Banu Nadir killing the Prophet ﷺ turning against the Muslims, meaning ripping up the constitution and working with Quraysh. And the correspondence or the agreement was, maybe we do this in a quiet way. Maybe we don't actually cause a war. How about you guys live right beside him? He comes to your neighborhoods quite often. How about you just end it quietly? Okay? Make it look like an accident. Just make this end. When he's out of the picture, alayhi salatu wasalam, we doubt this is going to go any farther. Why? Because it was still early in the development of Islam. The number of Muslims at that point was quite low. It had not exceeded 2,000 people to that point, which is quite a small number. So the Prophet ﷺ knew that, but he never based his actions on just information. He had to go and figure this out for himself. So what he did is he went and he visited Banu Nadir, and he had Abu Bakr and Umar and Talha and Sa'id ibn Zayd, all those people watch for him, for any signs of treason, just to see if they're going to betray him, alayhi salatu wasalam, or try and pull a stunt on him. So he goes there and he's visiting them, and sure enough, they see two people on the top, on the roof of the house that the Prophet ﷺ is in, moving a big rock closer to the edge, where he's close to the door where there's doors to the houses, close to the door where they're probably going to ask him to walk out of this door, push the rock in that way. It was an accident. Two people were working on the roof and it fell and it hurt. We didn't mean to do it. So when they saw that, there's another narration that tells us that Jibreel alayhi salam himself told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Regardless, either way, alayhi salatu wasalam came to his attention that they were trying to kill him. So he tells them, this is what you've done, this is what I've found out, here's the correspondence, you've been talking to Quraysh, and he leaves alayhi salatu wasalam quickly, before they actually start thinking of killing him. He gets out of Banu Nadir, he goes back to Medina, and he says to Banu Nadir that this can't happen, you need to leave. This is an act of treason. You need to leave. This is you broke the agreement. There was an agreement between us on the Constitution. You signed it. You agreed to something, and now you've broken that word, and you need to leave. So initially, Banu Nadir said, "All right, we'll leave. What can we take with us?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "Take everything. You can take your wealth, take your weapons, take everything you want. It's not your money that I'm interested in. Just leave. You need to leave. You can't stay here. If this is what you're thinking to do, then you have to get out." So initially they started packing and getting ready. But a man called Halaqa ibn Akhtab, who we're going to talk about quite a bit in the next couple of lessons, he was one of the leaders of these tribes. And he found a way to convince the people that, you know what, how about you stay? Because what they had there, they had forts. It's not like they had just regular houses like the Muslims had. They had forts with huge walls surrounding them. So if they decided to close the doors and just stay inside, right? They could live on whatever resources they had inside for months, easy. Actually, the Muslims on the other side had less resources than they had on the inside. So it would be harder for the Muslims to survive without actually importing goods than it would be for them. Because Halaqa ibn Akhtab was corresponding with Quraysh, hoping that they would come and help them. We'll hold our ground, and we'll kind of distract Muhammad from you guys, because he's probably going to put a siege around us and try to force us out, and then you guys can come over and you can try and fight him with us. Unfortunately, Quraysh wasn't ready yet, so they didn't come through with their part of the deal. And what ended up happening was the Prophet ﷺ put a siege around them, around Banu Nadir, for around 20 days. And the Quran records this. You guys have probably heard this surah before, and you memorized it at some point. So I'm going to read it to you just so it makes sense to understand what this surah is talking about. So, سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Everything within the heavens, within the cosmos and on the earth, exalts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is continuously exalting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is indeed the unfathomable, and He is the most wise subhanahu wa ta'ala. هو الذي أخرج الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب من ديارهم لأول الحشر ما ظننتم أن يخرجوا. He is the one subhanahu wa ta'ala who had the people of the book, meaning talking about Banu Nadir. This surah, by the way, one of its names is Al-Hashr, and another name is Banu Nadir. It's actually called Surah Banu Nadir, as far as Ibn Abbas tells us. Who had the people of the book of Banu Nadir be removed from their homes. لأول الحشر, to the beginning of Al-Hashr. Al-Hashr has two meanings. It can mean the day of judgment, one meaning of it. I don't think that's the actual meaning. Al-Hashr, what I think it actually means, is when people gather up, when people start choosing sides. right? When people are choosing sides, they're choosing. So Al-Hashr was the beginning of Arabia starting to choose sides. It was going to happen. The peak moment of the Prophet ﷺ's struggle had not arrived yet. It's going to arrive very soon. The peak moment where you have to choose. You're either going to stand by him ﷺ, or at least have peace treaties with him, or you're going to stand by Quraysh. Everyone has to make a choice. So the peak moment hadn't come yet. The awwal al-hashr, to the beginning of the proper distribution, or the moment where everyone's going to have to pick a side. مَا ظَنَنْتُمْ أَنْ يَخْرُجُوا. Oh Muslims, you never thought that they would ever leave. Why? Because they were so strong. They had huge castles and forts, and the walls around them were so high. It was impossible for in the minds of the Arabs who were living in tents and small houses around them. We could never remove these people. It's impossible. They're extremely wealthy. They're well armed. They're well educated. They're well organized. They have a lot of wealth inside. And look at their castles and their forts. It's impossible. We can't touch them. مَا ظَنَنْتُمْ أَنْ يَخْرُجُوا. You thought they would never leave, or you didn't have the ability to make them leave. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala couldn't do it. Maybe there was an assumption in the minds of some. وَظَنُّوا. What did they think? And see, the surah talks about what happened from the end. Because they're going to leave. This was going to happen at the end. I haven't arrived at that point yet. But the surah comes and talks at the end, and then it rewinds back. Yes?
Did that part of the surah come before they actually expand their
No. This came after their removed. The surah came talking about a lot of stuff. That's why it's a very powerful one. It's an important surah to learn in terms of the meaning. وَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مَانِعَتُهُمْ حُصُونُهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ. And they thought that their forts were stronger than God. They thought that their forts could protect them from the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they were to betray or to do something wrong. They thought, oh, well, we have castles and forts and walls, and they can't beat us. وَظَنُّوا أَنَّهُمْ مَانِعَتُهُمْ حُصُونُهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ فَأَتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَمْ يَحْتَسِبُوا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beat them from which they did not suspect or expect. Very often in your life, true success and true failure will come to you from a door that you didn't know existed in the first place. Will come to you through something or through a life portal that you didn't even think was possible to begin with. I mean, you will be thrown such a horrible curveball in life. And all the events and all the plans that you have for the future will be changed so dramatically, and then things will actually turn out well, or turn out the opposite, in a way that you could have never ever imagined or planned out. And this is how life is. It's your job to plan things out. What I'm going to tell you is 90% of the time it never actually works out the way you plan it out. It's okay. That's fine. This is how life is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always shows you things in different light. Just so you never forget. Just know that's all in His hands, subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just ask anyone who's over 30, they'll tell you, oh yeah, it's always like that. This is how life is. True success and true failure, true happiness and true sadness will always happen in a way that you never planned, you never imagined possible to begin with. It's completely out of the blue. فَأَتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَمْ يَحْتَسِبُوا. And they were beaten from a way that they didn't even think was possible. How were they beaten? What is the continuation of the ayah? What is it? وَقَذَفَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الرُّعْبَ. They lost by panic. They panicked. That's it. They just panicked. A rumor started amongst them that Muhammad and the Muslims are going to be able to overcome our walls. Or another rumor started that we're not going to have enough food. One person told the other, there's all their force and they have enough food, and they panicked. And they started getting scared. And it's not going to work. And we're not going to starve, and they're going to kill us all, and it's not going to be have to leave. And Huyay ibn Akhtab and the other leaders are standing there and say, look, we can show you the math. You have enough food for a year. The Muslims will starve on the other side of these walls before you do. You don't need to leave. They cannot overcome the walls. It's impossible. We're fine. But they had ru'b means just fear. Extreme fear. Fear beat them. Mathematically and practically, the Muslims would have never got in. It would have never happened. The Prophet's siege would have probably went on for a couple of months, and then they would have probably just left because there's nothing they can do. You cannot get inside. It's impossible. He didn't have enough manpower at the time. And you can see examples of this to happen in the future. You can see this happen more than once in his life. Stuck in front of a huge wall and castles, and there's no way in. He doesn't have enough manpower to get in. And how did they lose? Fear in the heart. And they panicked. And Huyay and all his believers were beaten by the majority of people who said, you have to leave. No matter what they told them, no matter how much they tried to convince them that you don't need to leave. This is a dumb move. We don't. Khalas, they wanted to leave. So Huyay had to come back to the Prophet ﷺ and say, all right, we're leaving. We're going to leave. What can we take with us? So this time he says, you can take everything but weapons. You have to leave your swords. After doing this, after the second betrayal, you have to leave your swords. You can take everything else. Take your food, take your furniture, take everything. Just can't take weapons. So what did they do? Out of hatred, what did they يخربون بيوتهم بأيديهم وأيدي المؤمنين فاعتبروا يا أولي الأبصار. As they left, they knocked down the walls of their homes so that the Muslims couldn't benefit from it. So when you went and saw it, after they left, when you entered, you would find all the homes destroyed, brought down, because they didn't want the Muslims to benefit from it at all. ولولا أن كتب الله عليهم الجلاء لعذبهم في الدنيا ولهم في الآخرة عذاب النار. And had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not written for them or destined for them to actually leave, then they would have been beaten. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to grant the Prophet the Muslims victory. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want bloodshed. He wanted them to leave. Just leave. Let there be no bloodshed for this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want them to be punished in dunya. But they will be punished in akhirah for this action if they don't repent for it. What I'm interested in is one of the second ayah after this. ذلك بأنهم شاقوا الله ورسوله ومن يشاق الله فإن الله شديد العقاب. The reason that it was done to them is because that they fought Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet, and they mistreated Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet, and he who does that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is extremely harsh in His punishment. And then an ayah right after that, one of the most interesting ones in the Quran. It took me years to figure out what this ayah was doing there. It goes like this: ما قطعتم من لينة أو تركتموها قائمة على أصولها فبإذن الله وليخزي الفاسقين. Now the ayat prior to this one are really clear in what they're telling us. The message is very clear. The victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come in ways you couldn't imagine. Don't base things on whether you think it's possible or not. If it's the right thing to do, then you need to do it. Even if you can't see it through fully. Even if you can't see the end of how this is going to work out. Even if you're like, I can't see this working out. It doesn't seem like it's going to work. Is it the right thing to do? Yes, then you keep on doing it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you victory from ways you could have never imagined in the first place. Just like you could easily lose in ways that you never could have imagined in the first place as well. And this is what the ayah is teaching us at the beginning. But then this ayah in the middle, the one after it, talk about when money's made. And I'll talk about that a bit once we finish the story. But this ayah is right in the middle. It goes like this: مَا قَطَعْتُم مِّن لِينَةٍ أَوْ تَرَكْتُمُوهَا قَائِمَةً عَلَى أُصُولِهَا. Any of the palm trees that you cut down, or the ones that you left standing and didn't touch, فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. This happened with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلِيُخْزِيَ الْفَاسِقِينَ. And may those who betrayed Him subhanahu wa ta'ala be in khizi. They're in damnation. But what does this mean? I remember reading this ayah, so this is what happened. This is for you to understand the mentality of the Muslims at the time. It's an extremely interesting story. What happened was the Muslims who had hit the siege around the forts of Bani Nadir. It just happened to be that the time of year was winter. Now, you may think that winter in the desert is hot. And that's because you don't know. You've never been there before. Winter in the desert is extremely cold, especially at night. It gets so cold that you could easily die from frostbite if you're outside and you're not properly dressed. It gets really cold at night in the middle of the desert. So what time of year was it? It was winter. And the siege was around the forts, and they had to stay, the Muslims and the Prophet ﷺ had to stand there, guarding, waiting for an opening to see if they can get in, because that's how a siege is basically, you just stand around the forts, they defend the forts, and you stand on the other side. You wait for an opening. You wait for a bunch of guys over here to start playing cards or go to sleep, so you can jump through that way, open the door, and everyone goes in. That's how it works. So you have to be on guard all the time. Most people. And that requires, you have to be fed 3 times a day, or at least once a day. You have to have proper clothing. And if it's -10 in the middle of the night, you need some source of heat. And they had nothing. They literally had nothing. They had used up whatever wood they had nothing left. And they were freezing. And in the understanding what the Prophet ﷺ had taught is that you never harm a living thing. في كل كبد رطبة أجر. In every moist liver there is reward. What does that mean? In every living soul that you benefit, or that you help, or that you are kind to, you will be rewarded. And alayhi salatu would tell people you never cut down trees. A tree is something, especially a palm tree, because at that time it was the only resource that existed in Arabia, so it made no sense for you to go chopping these things down. But they were so cold that they looked for something called alina. Now, lina is a palm tree that is small. It's a small palm tree, not a big one, not one of those big ones. This is one of the smaller ones, meaning the older ones, the ones that don't give as much dates. So they got so cold that they cut down a few of them, and they made them, and they used them for wood to warm themselves. And then as they did that, they felt bad about doing it. I mean, they did it because they had out of necessity, out of the fact that they were so cold. But as they were doing it, they felt really bad. And they started feeling guilty. And they started wondering, are we disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing this? And is this the reason that we have not been granted victory, that we cut down these palm trees? That we cut down a tree, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has deprived us from being able to be victorious on Banu Nadir. So the ayah will come and say that, no. ما قطعتم من لينة أو تركتموها قائمة على أصولها فبإذن الله. Whatever palm tree that you cut down, or the other ones that you didn't touch, it all happened with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are not at fault. Don't feel bad. But what I want you to understand is that the Muslims in their mindset was that if they were to cut down a tree, even if they needed it, even if they were freezing cold and they needed it just for wood, they felt bad about it. In their minds, they were like, yeah, we should. Is it right to cut down a tree? I think it's haram to cut down a tree. Isn't it improper to cut down a tree? And they start talking amongst themselves. The early Muslims, they felt guilty if they harmed a tree. All right? They felt guilty if they harmed a tree, not another human being, a tree. And the ayah came to say, you don't feel guilty about it. You had no choice, you needed it, you were going to die if you didn't do it. It happened in the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's the ayah, right? It's stuck in the middle of Surah Al-Hashr. Just to remind us of how Muslims at that time actually thought. This is the mentality the Muslims carried. They weren't slaughtering people for nothing. They were not looking for their own brothers and sisters to harm. They weren't out for bloodshed. They weren't out to kill people. Not at all. They felt guilty if they cut down a tree. And they weren't sure if it was proper to do that or wasn't proper, and started wondering and doubting themselves. And the Quran would come and tell them that no, it wasn't a problem. Yes?
So did the Muslims attempt to break into the walls?
Of course, yeah, that's the whole point of the siege, you have to try. Now they weren't successful, but you have to try a few times. And then you just wait. You have to wait and see if the number of guards, decrease, or if you can see. It's a very complicated, again, it's warfare, it's a very complicated process. They tried it, they couldn't do it, because they had, actually, they had more people on the inside than the Muslims on the outside. Like, they were outnumbered by the people inside. There was maybe 700 Muslims performing the siege around the castle and the forts of Bani Nadir, and inside there was maybe 2,000 people well armed with enough food, but it was just fear. They were filled with fear, and that's why they left. And this is the whole point of Surah Al-Hashr telling us and teaching us the story. They ended up leaving. They got up and they left. Where did they go? Some of them went to Khaybar, and some went to Adru'at in Damascus. And the Muslims were able to go in and take the land at least. So the Prophet ﷺ, once they entered, he talked to the Ansar, and he said, مَا تَرَوْنَ أَقْسِمُهَا بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ أَمْ أُعْطِيهَا لِلْمُهَاجِرِينَ وَيَخْرُجُونَ مِنْ دِيَارِكُمْ. So one or two things I think should happen. Either I divide this equally between Muhajirin and Ansar, between the people who came from Mecca and the people